A second paradigm that we have for death and resurrection in the New Testament is a bodily resurrection. Now, this bodily resurrection probably corresponds to the slide that we saw earlier about resurrection in Daniel. In fact, by the time of Christ, the majority of people in Jesus's environment would believe that when God comes back and executes judgment on the world, those who are dead in the graves will be resurrected and they will be vindicated by God. So you see some of those images in the New Testament. First Thessalonians is a book by Paul. It's probably the earliest writing in the New Testament. And notice the way that Paul describes the time of death and resurrection. And he does center it around his expectation that Christ is coming back very soon, probably in his own lifetime. He says, God will bring with him those who have died. For we declare to you by the word of the Lord that we who are alive, who are left until the coming of the Lord, will by no means precede those who have died. For the Lord himself, with a cry of command, so this is Jesus, with the archangel's call and the sound of God's trumpet. Again, those images are meant to reflect the events surrounding God giving the law to Moses in the Old Testament. With the sound of God's trumpet will descend from heaven. So Jesus is up in heaven. He comes back down. And he says that the dead will rise, the dead in Christ will arise first. So before anybody else is involved in this particular event, those who are dead and were believers, according to Paul's way of thinking, will be resurrected from the dead first. And then he says those of us who are alive, and so clearly Paul expects Jesus to return in his own lifetime, will be caught up to the clouds together with them to meet the Lord in the air. So we will be with the Lord forever. So first the dead rise from the dead, and then those who are living and following the teachings of Christianity will ascend, will start flying upwards into the sky where Jesus is, and meet those who had died and now are resurrected in the air. Now, Paul doesn't go on and say anything about heaven here, and it's not really clear exactly what he expects to happen once everybody is up in the air with Jesus. But clearly, Paul has some kind of idea that when people are resurrected from the dead, they will be human bodies. But I'll say more about that when we look at 1 Corinthians 15.